They're shutting off your water right now! That's what my neighbor yelled as I stepped out onto my cabin porch with a cup of coffee in my hand. I looked down toward the gravel road and saw two HOA trucks parked near the main pipeline that runs behind the trees. And standing there in her neat gray suit and heels was Karen, arms crossed, smiling like she already won. I walked closer but stayed calm. What's going on? She didn't even look at me at first. She waved at the workers and said loudly, "Cut it! He's not part of this community anymore." One of the men hesitated. "Ma'am, this line feeds multiple homes." She snapped back, "I am the HOA president." "Do what I said." Then she finally turned to me. "You were warned. No HOA fees, no water. That cabin isn't protected anymore." I stared at her for a second. The lake behind my cabin was quiet. The mountains were calm. Even my golden retriever didn't move. But inside, I felt that slow burn. "I don't remember joining your HOA," I said. "You don't get a choice," she replied. "This entire lake area is under our control." That word, control. 2 weeks ago, she taped a bright red notice on my door saying, I had 10 days to pay retroactive HOA dues. I ignored it. Because my deed clearly says my land sits outside her HOA boundary. She didn't like that. She came back with threats, then fake violation letters. Then yesterday she said, "You'll regret this." Now here we were. One of the workers bent down and started turning the main valve with a wrench. I raised my voice just enough. "You sure you want to touch that line?" Karen laughed. "Oh, please. You think you scare me? You're one man in a cabin?" The worker paused and looked at me. "Sir, this is the main supply that runs under the East Ridge." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, it does." Karen rolled her eyes. "Cut it!" The wrench turned. A deep metal clank echoed through the pipe. And then something happened she didn't expect. One of the other HOA homes down the hill suddenly lost pressure. I heard someone shouting in the distance. A sprinkler system sputtered and died. Then another house. The worker stood up fast. "Ma'am, this isn't just his cabin." I took a step closer, still calm. "You really should have checked the county water map." Karen's smile faded just a little. "What are you talking about?" I looked straight at her. "The line you're cutting runs through my land first." She froze. I continued, slow and clear. "And the master valve that controls flow to your entire HOA neighborhood sits on my property." The wind moved through the trees. One of the workers dropped his wrench. Karen tried to laugh. "That's not possible." "Oh, it is," I said quietly. "And the easement agreement?" "It expired last year." Her face changed. In the distance, I could hear more neighbors yelling about water pressure. Phones were coming out. People were recording. Karen stepped closer to me and whispered sharply, "Turn it back on." I tilted my head. "I thought I wasn't part of your community." Her jaw tightened. And that's when her phone rang. She answered it, annoyed. But the look on her face shifted fast. "What do you mean the whole east side has no water?" I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Because she didn't just try to cut off my water, she just shut down her entire neighborhood. And she still had no idea who originally installed that plumbing line, or why my name was the only one listed on the county infrastructure permit." Karen's voice got louder on the phone. "No, don't call the city yet. I'll handle it." She hung up and looked at me like this was somehow still my fault. "You did this?" she said. I shook my head. "Your workers touched the valve." One of the men stepped back. "Ma'am, he's right. We were told this was a private branch line." Karen turned on them. "Just turn it back on!" The worker swallowed. "We can't." Silence hit. "What do you mean you can't?" she snapped. He pointed toward the metal housing near the tree line. "When we forced the manual shut, the pressure lock system kicked in. It's an older control design. It won't reset without access to the master chamber." I watched her process that. "And where is that?" she demanded. The worker looked at me. I didn't smile. I didn't move. "On my land, behind a locked gate." Her face went pale. Down the hill, more shouting started. Someone yelled, "My kids are in the shower!" Another voice, "Our pipes are sputtering!" Phones were recording now. One neighbor even started live streaming. Karen lowered her voice. "Open the gate." I took a slow breath. "You said I wasn't part of this community." Her jaw tightened. "Stop playing games." This isn't a game, I said calmly. You trespassed on my property. You ordered a shutoff without checking the legal map, and you tried to punish me. She stepped closer. You think you can hold an entire neighborhood hostage? I looked her straight in the eyes. No, but I can protect my property. That's when a police cruiser rolled up near the gravel road. She smiled again. Good, let's settle this. The officer stepped out, calm but serious. We got multiple calls about water loss and a disturbance. Karen rushed over to him. Officer, this man illegally blocked access to the HOA's main water line. He's disrupting essential utilities. The officer looked at me. Sir? I kept my voice steady. They came onto my land without permission and tampered with infrastructure. Registered under my permit. The officer frowned slightly. Registered to you? I nodded. County Permit 47A, East Ridge Master. Feed. Installed 15 years ago. Karen laughed sharply. He's bluffing. The officer turned to the worker. Who authorized the shutoff? The worker pointed at Karen. She did. The officer looked back at her. Do you have documentation proving HOA ownership of that line? She hesitated. Just for a second. It's understood, she said. Understood isn't legal, the officer replied. Down the hill, more cars were pulling out of driveways. People were walking up toward us now. And then the officer's radio crackled. Dispatch to Unit 12. City Utilities confirms the master valve access is listed under private easement. Name registered is... Static buzzed for a moment. Karen held her breath. The officer glanced at me. Registered to the property owner of Lakeside Parcel 18. That's my cabin. The officer turned slowly back to Karen. Ma'am, he said calmly, did you order a shutoff on a privately registered water control system? Her confidence cracked. It feeds the HOA, she said loudly. The officer nodded once. Through his land. The neighbors were close enough now to hear everything. I spoke clearly, not angry, not loud. I never cut their water. They cut it themselves. Karen's phone started ringing again. This time she didn't answer. The officer adjusted his stance. Right now, the priority is restoring water. Sir, are you willing to reopen access? I looked at Karen. She looked back at me. And for the first time, she wasn't in control. You want access? I said quietly. She didn't respond. I continued, steady and clear. Then we need to talk about the forged HOA notices, the trespassing, and the false claims you filed last week. Her eyes widened. The officer looked at her. False claims? Karen's voice shook slightly. That's not... I reached into my pocket and pulled out folded papers. Because when you tried to shut off my water, I said slowly, you forgot I already filed something bigger. The officer held out his hand, and Karen had no idea what was written on those papers. The officer unfolded the papers slowly. Karen tried to speak, but he raised his hand for silence. What is this? He asked me. Formal complaint, I said calmly. Filed 3 days ago with the County Utilities Board, and a request for investigation into fraudulent HOA expansion. Karen's head snapped toward me. Fraudulent? I didn't look at her. You've been collecting fees from homes that are outside your legal boundary. The neighbors behind her started murmuring. That's not true, she shouted. Every house here signed. I nodded. Some did. Some were pressured, and some were told their water access depended on joining. The officer's eyes narrowed. Ma'am, did you condition utility access on HOA membership? She didn't answer right away. That silence said enough. One of the neighbors stepped forward. She told us we had to pay or we'd lose services. Another voice came from behind. Yeah, she said the lake supply was HOA controlled. Karen spun around. You're all misunderstanding. I finally spoke again. The lake isn't HOA controlled? She turned back toward me, furious. Yes, it is. I shook my head. No, it's a natural body connected to a county-regulated feed system. The intake pump sits on my land. Always has. The officer looked confused. You own the intake station? Yes. He looked at Karen. Did you inform residents of that? She stammered. It's community managed. Managed, I repeated softly. Not owned. Right then, another vehicle pulled up. Not police. City Utilities. 2 officials stepped out holding tablets and printed maps. One of them walked straight toward the officer. "We received an emergency alert from the East Ridge pressure system. Who authorized the manual shut?" The officer pointed at Karen. She took a step back. "It was a maintenance adjustment." The utility official shook his head. "You don't have authority over that valve. That's a protected line." He turned his tablet toward everyone. On the screen was a clear map. A bold blue line ran from the lake intake station, across my property, then branched downhill into the HOA neighborhood. And right at the top of that map, in black letters, was my name listed as infrastructure controller. The murmurs grew louder. Karen looked like the ground just disappeared under her feet. "This is outdated," she said weakly. The utility official shook his head again. "Updated last quarter." Then he added something that changed everything. "And we've also been reviewing reports of unauthorized fee collection connected to utility threats." Complete silence. Karen's face drained of color. The officer slowly turned toward her. "Ma'am, were you collecting HOA dues under the claim that you controlled this water line?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. One of the neighbors stepped forward, holding his phone. "I have the email. She said if we didn't comply, access to lake water would be reconsidered." More phones came out. More recordings. I stayed quiet. The utility official looked at me. "Sir, we need access to the master chamber to reset the pressure lock." I nodded. "Follow me." Karen suddenly rushed forward. "You can't just—" The officer gently stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, I suggest you stop." For the first time, she wasn't leading the scene. She was being held back. As I walked toward the gate behind the tree line, the neighbors parted to let us pass. One of them whispered, "She told us she owned everything." I unlocked the heavy steel gate and opened it. Inside sat the master valve chamber, clean, secured, properly labeled. The utility official looked impressed. "You maintain this?" "Every year," I said. He nodded. "Good thing. Because if that pressure spike continued, it could have damaged half the lower homes." Half the lower homes. Karen heard that. This wasn't just embarrassment anymore. This was liability. The utility team reset the system. A deep hum echoed through the pipes as pressure slowly returned. Down the hill, sprinklers sputtered back to life. Someone cheered. The officer stepped closer to Karen. "Ma'am, I need you to remain here." Her voice shook. "For what?" He looked at the utility official. The official didn't hesitate. "For investigation into fraud, unlawful interference with protected infrastructure, and possible extortion." The word hit hard. Extortion. Karen looked at me like she wanted to blame me again. But I didn't say anything. Because this wasn't revenge. This was paperwork catching up to power. And she still didn't know about the security footage from last night, when she tried something even worse. Karen tried one last time to regain control. "This is insane. He's twisting everything." The officer looked calm. "Ma'am, step aside." She didn't move. I reached into my pocket again. "You might want to see this too." The officer glanced at me. "More documents?" "Not documents." I held up a small remote and pressed a button. From the side of my cabin, a mounted screen flickered on. I had installed it months ago after the first fake HOA notice showed up. The neighbors leaned in. Security footage. Timestamp 11:43 p.m. last night. The screen showed Karen walking through my gate. No workers. No notice. Just her. She had a flashlight in one hand and bolt cutters in the other. A low gasp spread through the crowd. The video continued. She crouched near the master valve housing and tried to force open the protective casing. When it didn't budge, she kicked it. Then she pulled something from her purse, a folded document, and taped it to the chamber door. The officer narrowed his eyes. "Pause it." I froze the frame. The paper taped to the chamber was a bright red notice. "Emergency HOA seizure order." The utility official shook his head slowly. "There is no such thing." The video resumed. She looked around, thinking no one saw her. Then she tried to turn a smaller bypass valve. When it didn't move, she gave up and stormed off. The screen went black. Silence. One of the neighbors whispered, "She told us the city approved that." Another said, "She said he was illegally tapping water." Karen's voice cracked. "That footage is edited." The officer didn't react. "Ma'am, were you on his property last night?" She hesitated again. That hesitation was louder than any answer. The officer stepped closer. You understand this is criminal trespass? And attempted tampering with regulated infrastructure? Her confidence was gone now. I was protecting the community. I finally spoke, calm as ever. From what? She turned to me, almost desperate. You refused to cooperate. You refused to join. I refused to be bullied, I said. The utility official folded his arms. If that bypass valve had turned, it could have contaminated the intake line. The neighbors looked stunned. Contaminated. That word spread fast. The officer reached for his radio. Dispatch, I need a supervisor on site. Karen's hand started shaking. This is over water dues. I shook my head slightly. No, this is about power. A supervisor unit pulled up minutes later. By now, almost the entire lower ridge was watching. The officer handed over the complaint papers I filed earlier and the security footage. The supervisor listened quietly, then looked at Karen. Did you create official-looking HOA seizure documents? They were notices, she said weakly. Notices don't give you control over private utility systems. Her shoulders dropped. And then came the final twist she never saw coming. The utility official looked at me. Sir, we also reviewed the original installation permit. I nodded slowly. He turned toward the crowd. This entire East Ridge system was privately funded and installed 15 years ago. Karen looked confused. By the developer. The official shook his head. No. He pointed at me. By him. The crowd went silent. I didn't say it for attention. I never did. When the developer ran out of money, I said quietly, I paid to finish the intake station. The agreement gave me infrastructure control rights in exchange. One of the neighbors blinked. So, without him? The official finished the sentence. There would be no water line feeding this HOA. Karen staggered back like she'd been hit. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. The supervisor officer stepped forward. Ma'am, turn around. Gasps filled the air. This is just for questioning, he added. But based on what we've seen, trespass, infrastructure tampering, false representation, and possible fraud, and you are being detained. Her hand slowly went behind her back. As the cuffs clicked shut, she looked at me one last time. Not angry, not superior, just shocked. I didn't smile. I just said one sentence loud enough for everyone to hear. You don't threaten a man's water. When he built the well, down the hill sprinklers ran steady again. Kids laughed. Pressure was normal. Justice wasn't loud. It was calm. And this still wasn't the end. Because once the investigation opened, the HOA books were about to be audited. And what they were about to find would shake the entire ridge. End the story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing HOA stories.